Welcome friends, it's Ray. Thank you so much for joining me today. In today's video, I am creating cards with the September Hero Arts Monthly Card Kit. The kit today fits into this zippered meshed pouch, and let's take a look at what we have in the kit. Alright, we have a 4x6 stamp set that has a lovely large floral bouquet and some apples or an apple, some leaves, a pomegranate, some nice sentiments, fall sentiments, and love that large image. We did get the coordinating die. I haven't pulled mine apart yet or snipped them apart, but there is a die cut for the pomegranate, the leaves, I said apple, but that's a pear. And then the floral. So all of the images have die cuts. Lovely. And we get two of these rub-ons, and on the back of our main panel, it tells us how to the directions for using these lovely rub-ons, and there are two of them, and I feel it. There's also the wooden stick to use to affix the rub-ons. Oh, sorry, I was just moving that around, but that is beautiful. And we also get a large rubber background stamp. Ooh, I like that. That is really lovely. And that's 6x6, and then we get some cardstock. We get ivory, antique ivory, and those are 8.5 by 5.5, and then we get the sand. Lovely. And there was one other item. What did I do with it? Yeah, here. We get the rose gold metallic floss. And it says on the sheet here that there are 5 yards of this. Really pretty. So let's get started. Let's make some cards with this kit. For my first card, I'm removing my foam mouse pad from my Misty and am using the sand cardstock from the kit and placing the large background stamp from the kit, placing that in my Misty, and it doesn't look like that's directional. So I'm placing that at the top of my Misty and bringing in some distress ink in Craft Campfire, and I'm just inking up that entire background stamp. I am using my dry eraser to try to apply even pressure to my stamped image, and I am stamping this about 3 times to get good coverage. Next, I'm bringing in some glitter hero paste, and this is in a very large 4-ounce container, and just taking my palette knife and blending that into my stamped background. I did let my distress ink dry, and so just bringing this in, and I'm just going to spread it all the way across that background stamp, and then I'll smooth out any rough edges and just use that to fill in wherever I need to. Beautiful. And so I'm going to immediately wash off my palette knife and set this aside to dry. Now, while that is drying, I am going to work on my rub-ons. I'm going to just go ahead and cut out my large bouquets. Um, wow, this is so lovely. And I've never used rub-ons before, so this is going to be great. Just getting used to them and seeing whether or not it is something that I would continue to purchase. So I peeled off um, the top portion or top layer, and then using the popsicle stick that came in, I am rubbing that onto some white cardstock. And great. Now I'm going to go ahead and die cut this. So I'm placing my die on top along with some low tack tape, and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. I did place just some clear copy paper on top. I didn't want anything to transfer over that may be in my die cutting machine. And so now here, this is lovely. This cut well, no issue there. And so now I'm taking cutting a second one and going ahead, and I've cut the pomegranate, a couple of pomegranates and the pear, and now I'm removing the top layer. Oh, and this is lovely. It's not high gloss. It's more of a matte and looks more realistic. Oh, I love this and certainly would purchase it again. I mean, this is so quick. I don't have to do any coloring. Ha, love it. So now I'm placing my panel in my trimmer, and I did through the magic of YouTube. I let this set probably about an hour to dry, but I don't think it took quite that long to dry. But I am trimming it down, and we'll end up with a just under 8.5 inch um, cardstock, and I'm making a slimline card, and the width is 3 3/4. You could cut yours to the standard width, which is 3.5. But I placed a cardstock scrap in the Misty and the thank you sentiment from the kit, and used my grid acetate sheet to line that up. And I'm bringing in some Hero Arts Cup of Joe ink, nice brown ink, to stamp the sentiment. I stamped that 3 times to get really good coverage. And I did not want to go black with my ink because I am liking all of the autumn hues, and I wanted everything to blend in nicely. So here I'm trying to decide if I want the stamp background on the bottom or top of my panel. And I decide that I want it on the bottom, so that I have plain up top. I'm liking that look better for this card. And then I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to place my sentiment. And so basically the sentiment will be right underneath my um, bouquet. So I've added liquid glue to my sentiment, and I'm just lining up my panel, and then using the grid on my mat, craft mat, to line up my sentiment on the panel. Since there's so much texture on my panel, I was liberal with my tacky glue and placed my acrylic block on top to make sure that has time to set. And so now I am working on my Bouquet, I did cut out 2 blanks from white cardstock and then affixed that with tacky glue for my bouquet. Decided that I wanted to go ahead and affix my panel to my card base before I add my focal image, and am just partially releasing the release tape. And I did add extra because this panel is going to be a little heavier when I add my bouquet. So now that that's adhered, I will go ahead and use glue, tacky glue, to affix my bouquet to my card base. And I'm going to place it just above my sentiment strip. Off camera, I added some drops of Nuvo Glitter Golden Sunset and pomegranate mounted on foam tape. Card number 2 is a Sympathy card, and I've cut a piece of sand cardstock to 5 by 4, placed it in my trimmer with the 4-inch side horizontal, and am going to score at 1/4 of an inch, and then again at 3/8 of an inch, leaving a 1/8 inch in between. And then I'm going to skip to leave a 1/2 inch in between those two, and then again score so that I have 2 lines 1/8 of an inch apart, skip a 1/2 inch, and repeat. I trimmed my panel down to 3 3/4 and placed it in my trimmer at 4 1/4, and then angling it and cutting it on the angle there. I decided to use my Wow Platinum embossing powder because it's not too shiny, since this is a Sympathy card. Not too shiny, and actually not too bold, but it does make a very nice statement. Understatement, I should say. So I have used some Versamark ink, my ink pad, and just I ran that from top to bottom on my panel, brought in some Stampendous ink, embossing ink, and used that on my little strip that's about 1/4 of an inch wide. And here, bringing in a dry paintbrush to remove the majority of this embossing powder, I really kind of wanted to stick on the raised areas of my scored panel. And by the way, I am using the scored, the raised side of this panel. And so I'm going for a more of a rustic look. So I'm thinning this out with, thinning those lines out with my dry paintbrush. So pretty much erasing as much of that embossing powder as I can. Then I'm going to take my tweezers and the paintbrush and just dip that 1/4 inch strip into the embossing powder. And then I'm going to heat up my embossing tool and go ahead and heat both of these pieces. And this is the rustic look that I want. So now I'm going to work on my sentiment, bringing in some of that same sand cardstock, and am picking a sentiment from Colorado Craft Company Sentiment Stamp Set. I'm using my grid acetate sheet to get this all lined up in my MISTI. And now I'm going to bring in that same Cup of Joe ink and go ahead and stamp my sentiment, Sympathy. And I'm going to stamp that 3 times. And then I will bring in the sub-sentiment with heartfelt and stamp that with the Cup of Joe ink as well. I'm using double-sided tape to affix my sand panel to my card base. I'm using craft tacky glue to affix my 1/4" strip to my card base. I let that set, and then we'll trim off both the left and right sides with my long shears. I've trimmed down my sentiment strip to 1 1/4 inches, and then I place my vase where I'm going to want to put my bouquet and mark that with a pencil. Placed a bouquet blank where I want my vase to sit, and then just roughly mark that with a pencil, and or marked where the 1/4" strip ends with a pencil, so that I know where to cut my blank. And I'm going to cut it down. Sorry, that's kind of off camera, slightly off camera. So I cut that down, and then I'm going to glue that to my main bouquet panel. And just so that the transition from my 1/4" strip and my bouquet blank are the same when I position my bouquet on my card base. I don't want that area to be raised, so I want it to be level. So that's what I'm doing here. So next I'm going to bring in my sentiment and position that right above that pencil line, and I'm determining here that I want to trim that a little bit off the right side and then angle the left side. So I'm doing that with my trimmer. Placing that sentiment strip flush right, and use some craft tacky glue to do that. I'm bringing in some of the metallic floss from the kit, and I'm going to cut a piece and double it and tie a bow. Well, it starts out as a bow and it ends a little differently, but I'm going to tie that to the bottom of my vase. And this is really slippery, so once I get it tied, I am going to add some craft tacky glue, which dries clear. I'm going to add that to the knot so that that does not come undone. As you saw, I did use my reverse tweezers to hold the knot while I tied, and then after I was done, I did trim the ends so that it flared out. So now I put the glue on top, and I'm gonna set this aside to let that dry. After that dries, I'm gonna bring my vase, my bouquet back in, and then using some tacky glue, go ahead and affix that to my card base and set that aside to dry. I usually don't show the inside sentiments, but I am using one today from scrapbook.com, and it has many sentiments on it, and it's called In Sympathy. And I do need to go ahead and get this card in the mail relatively soon. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that using Hero Arts Intensified Black ink. Only had to stamp it once. Love this ink. And using my grid acetate sheet to line up my sub-sentiment, and we'll go ahead and get that stamped as well. I did stamp my sub-sentiment 2 times. Card number 3 is a card that I created earlier. I was going to use it in another video and was decided to use it in a future video. So it's in this one. I am using the same process for this bottom panel that I used for card number 2, my Sympathy card. And I'm using Hero Art's Palm Green cardstock and a sentiment from an old Hero Art stamp set, coloring, layering leaves. I will try to remember to link that below. Grateful for you is what I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss here in that using that Wow Platinum embossing powder. I have distressed this panel with the Wow Platinum embossing powder as well. And then I have used Hero Arts Autumn Leaves fancy dies to cut out dies. And I've used an alcohol ink panel for my leaves, and uh, used I actually made the alcohol ink panel in my last card video. So I will definitely link to that if you're interested in checking out that alcohol ink process. I'm using liquid glue here to affix a blank piece of cardstock to my large elm leaf. I did not show a lot of this process as it was pretty close to the same as the Sympathy card in terms of creating the bottom card base or card panel. But I did, after I finished this panel, I did bring in some of the Nuvo glitter drops in Golden Sunset and added them to the tops of both of my acorns as well as some drops around my leaf bouquet. Yes, I'm calling this a leaf bouquet. Lovely. Card number 4 is an A2 card. I'm using a piece of that antique linen cardstock from the kit, cut it down to 3.5 by 5, and then using my T ruler and lining that up with my grid mat to just make a pencil line, draw a line at 3 inches down. So here I'm cutting apart the rest of my rub-ons because I want to use those. Got one stuck on my mat there and it won't come up. I guess that's a good thing. It's not going to separate from the card at any point, right? So anyway, lining up all of my floral pieces or remaining pieces, and just trying to fix those on the card front in a way such that they are above and some may be below the line that I drew on my card panel. Then I start to go ahead and affix those to my panel. And we'll just continue to affix them all. And I am not too concerned with anything except I don't want the stems to be, say, highly visible where they end. And I will go back and fix some of these later if that's the way they end up. So, but that's my goal, my objective here. is trying to place the stems of each close to as close to my pencil line as possible. And some of these I am letting them overlap, especially if they are just leaves or greenery. Just letting some of those are overlapping on purpose because I'm trying to build a cohesive bouquet, for lack of a better word at this point. But I want to use as many of these rub-ons as I can. So after I'm done, I erase my pencil line, and I did put some leaves beneath the line. And here I am trimming my panel down to 3.5 by 5. Started with a slightly larger panel. I've placed a strip of pumpkin cardstock, Hero Arts cardstock in my MISTI, along with my acetate grid sheet. And then I am lining up a sentiment from the stamp set in the kit and using my Cup of Joe ink to stamp that sentiment. I stamped that sentiment 3 times just to make sure it is crisp, and then use double-sided tape to affix the sentiment strip to my card panel. I flip that over and trim off the excess from both sides. I use double-sided tape to affix my card panel to my card base. Next, I bring in a pomegranate that's mounted to foam tape, and a pear that I've also put foam tape on the back of, and I'm going to position my pear just so. Lovely. I use some of the metallic floss to make a bow to put on my card. And then I affixed my panel to the card base, and then used some liquid glue to affix my bow to the base of my bouquet right above my sentiment. I wanted a bit more security to hold this bow in place. So what I decided to do is to put some golden sunset right in the center of that bow. And that would add the extra security that I wanted. So I also used the Golden Sunset Nuvo glitter drops and placed some throughout my bouquet where I may have connected some florals, or they were slightly not connected. So that kind of covered that up and added some sparkle and shine and cohesiveness to my bouquet. Now let's take a closer look at all of the cards I made in today's video. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if not already a subscriber. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, good day, friends.